after midnight, so it's actually Friday and not Thursday, but this is a recording for Memoir Thursdays. I am speaking to you from Massanutten, Virginia, from the Massanutten, Virginia resort. Um, and I just had my first sleep. I woke up and I thought, go ahead and do your recording. And I was thinking today a lot about what I wanted to share. Yesterday was the 6-month anniversary of my mom passing. But what you see on the screen right now is a picture I took last week with my friend Gretchen, and her nickname is G Money, and I am a woman of many nicknames, but in the context of her, I have been called Magic Murph. And I thought maybe doing a little memoir on my many nicknames would be a fun thing to share. My first nickname, of course, came from my mom, and my parents had traveled to Australia before I was born. And at 15, there's this photo of us in our first home in Bayport, New York, where my older brother and I are in a red wagon, and you can see my very full face. And she has put what little hair I had into pigtails, and they kind of curled up like ears. And because I was round and cuddly, it reminded her of the koala bears that she got to hold in Australia. So my nickname became Bear. My older brother's name is Daniel, so he was Daniel Boone, or the Booner, and the Bear. And then later my younger brother became the Bezo, and I'm not really sure how that came about other than to have 3 B's. So Bear was my first nickname. And having a last name like Murphy just really leads to a lot of nicknames. Murph, Smurf, just Murphy in itself becomes its own name, even though it's your surname, last name. And, uh, but a significant nickname I also had was Mo. And that came about my senior year in high school. I had this week where 2 people who knew me, like knew me, mistakenly called me Maureen. And so I told my friend and my journalism school teacher at the time, like, of this kind of weird phenomenon. And she's like, well, you kind of look like a Maureen, or like, yeah, a Mo. You look like a Mo. And um, I later, after my first year at college, I worked at a restaurant called Route 66. And we have like these uniforms with the, like the gas station all-time attendants would wear, those jumpers. And we had to put a name on it, but they suggest not putting your actual name, like put a nickname, because there's often weirdos. So I chose Mo, and it just stuck. So a whole faction of college friends and high school friends, that they call me Mo. And I think people are always, Marianne, 8 letters is a lot. So people are always looking to shorten it. And in fact, in the Northeast, my nickname, people often call me Mare. My mother wanted to name me Mary, as all good Catholic women of her era. But my grandmother and aunts were already Mary Murphy. So she decided on Mary Ann to like maybe lessen the confusion. And she has a stepsister, Marianne, but my name is spelled differently than hers. So I'm not named after my aunt. So kind of strange, but um, so the people in the Northeast of the United States will use Mare, and Mare too is very popular for Mary as a nickname. When I lived in London as an exchange student, of course, kind of like, do you have a nickname? Because Marianne's, and I said, well, Mare. And Mayor or Mo, or and he's like, well, I can't call you Mayor because like that's slang in England for like you're a nightmare. So I thought that was pretty fun. Like, well, That might still be fitting at moments when I'm having my scary Ann moments, and that's a nickname I've given myself for when I'm, you know, um, used to be with menstrual cycle or menopause moods, or just you've really pissed me off and you have pushed the scary Ann button. Um, and then you think she's dead, then you have to meet Marianne Elias, who is, when I am overthinking to extreme and really not helping myself or anyone, she's the real bitch out of Marianne, Scary Ann, and Marianne Elias. um, but it's fun. What I love about nicknames is that it's someone is giving it to you, right? And generally speaking, it's um, out of some kind of adoration or love. You know, it's generally not negative, all those things, right? We got the Karens, poor people with the name Karen. That name has been ripped off as something really bad, and that stereotype totally exists, but they're not all actually Karens. Um, but like, we got uh, downer Daves and negative Nancy's, and so we kind of create these little nicknames, sometimes negative as well, but I guess the ones that I wanted to focus mostly on tonight, sharing with you, are the positive ones, and how they follow you for a lifetime. I mean, I'm 53 years old, and my older brother has me saved in his phone as Bear, and he will call me that. And Mary Bear would be something my dad might call me, and he's the only one who would call me Mary. And he's the only one that it felt okay for that. If someone called me Mary outside of that, I would correct them that, no, no, my name's Marianne. And I'm not sure why that bothers me so much, and why my father saying it is okay. I really don't know, but it's felt that way for a very long time, and have been speaking with him again, and cautiously so. Um, but nicknames do follow you, and he, ironically enough, he has a cohort of people who call him Mo as well. So I thought that was kind of interesting, um, that my dad and I have friends who call us the same nickname. And I have friends who have tried to name their children so they wouldn't have nicknames, so they do not shorten it. They're very conscientious about choosing a name that couldn't be shortened. I have friends who, you know, they gave the big formal name only to, call their child by a nickname. And then, that's becoming more popular now. Instead of John, you want to name them Jack, you just name them Jack instead of that formality. And I think that's interesting. As a child, I didn't really like Marianne. I thought it was kind of stuffy, and too mature of a name for a kid. So I would like introduce myself around 7 or 8 years old. I would try out new names and I would introduce myself as other names. And Christina apparently was a favorite of mine. And my mom, uh, we were at some kind of like family neighbor party, something like that. And whoever I met for the first time, and then was meeting my mother for the first time, she's like, "Oh, I met your daughter, Christina." My mother's like, "I don't have a daughter named Christina." So, um, but all these years later, now I I like my name, Marianne. I think it suits me. I think, um, having a traditional name now, I appreciate it like I didn't, although I really still don't care for the Gilligan's Island references. The amount of time that people have asked me where the professor is. And if you're too young to know what the Gilligan's Island is, well, then God bless you. Maybe people stop asking me that. But it's kind of maybe the only thing that I don't like about my name is how that reference comes up, and it's just kinda cheesy and overdone. I've heard it so many times, and all the years I worked in the hospitality industry, I started saying, like, if I had been given a nickel for every time that had been said to me, I wouldn't have to work this crappy job, so, um, yeah, but I appreciate, one of the tragedies of my 8-year-old life was, it was cool to have your name on everything, pencils and keychains, and you'd go on family vacation, and there was never anything with my spelling. So I'm sure kids who have really unique names go through that as well. I survived clearly that childhood tragedy, but I think names are really important. I think they do have an influence on who you are, and I swear to God, I went to grade school with a kid named Dickie Hickey, and I thought, how horrible are his parents that they would do this to him? And he would get picked on for sure. And it was just, and I remember seeing this Oprah episode of how she had like all the people on who had unusual names and they were in the audience, and it was like the famous Hogg twins, the Ima and Yura Hoggs. Like that father clearly did not want his daughters dating. And then there was a brother and sister in the audience, and they were Harry and Sherry Pitts. So it's like, I mean, a sense of humor, yes, but I think it's you have to. So I don't know. So parents should not be parenting, perhaps, but I think a name is really interesting, and I don't know if I'm the only one who ever plays this game, but when I'm people watching, I might imagine what someone's name is, and then if I get the chance to talk to them and find out their actual name, it's kind of an interesting, do they fit their name? And I know my brother and sister-in-law picked out names, but they kind of wanted to make sure that the child looked like the name, and I think that's interesting. I think what's also an interesting trend is how the first child generally has a traditional name, but if they're going to get a little creative, it's the second or third child that maybe has the more creative name. I've seen that kind of pattern um, amongst friends and in the world as such. But so anyway, that's all I have for you for Memoir Thursday nicknames, and just curious if you have any nicknames yourself, and the stories behind them. If you feel inclined to share them in the comments in the chat, I would love to know. And I hope you're doing well on 12:20 a.m. Friday after Thursday. But I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at Open Mic Poetry. And I wish you a good night. Until next time, take care.